And Justin and I are looking forward to the questions we'll be taking at the end. So let's get started.
So go ahead and start by patting yourselves on the back. You've decided to attend a webinar about how to be a better freelancer, which means you're at least one step ahead of many other folks. We know there's room for improvement in everything we do. And for freelancers, one of the best ways to distance ourselves from the field is to continually strive for excellence and improvement, both in the quality of our work and how we run our businesses.
Some of you may be completely new to this and wondering whether freelancing is right for you, while others are here for a refresher. So welcome.
Let's first start by talking about some of the advantages of freelancing, of which there are quite a number. First off, you're your own boss. You get to make your own hours and you make your own decisions. You get to work from home or co-work with other folks, or you can work from a coffee shop. You can geek out over stuff, write it off on your taxes, and you can do all of this, again, from the confines of your home or really anywhere you feel like doing it.
Vacation.
Yes.
Naturally, there will be some disadvantages to freelancing. So some of them are like your income depends on the constant flow of work, which you have to actively pursue. Aside from doing the work, you're also in charge of marketing, billing, contracts, chasing payments. You have to purchase and maintain your own equipment. There's nobody to take over when you're sick or you go on a planned vacation. And you have to be able to sell yourself and what you're able to do for your clients. But for many of us, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and that's why we're here. The first step to becoming a freelancer is realizing that you're an entrepreneur. You're doing things for yourself and making your own way. Everything you do is up to you. It's liberating, yes, and it's terrifying. But the first step is recognizing that what you have here is a business. So let's get started. You need to be serious. You need to get legit.
And the first thing you'll need is a name for your business. Decide on a name and then figure out something as far as the design around that. Branding yourself is really important, especially in this space. And it's not just about the business name, but also the visuals you come up with. Your brand and your presence online should convey professionalism, competence, and most importantly, creativity. You'll want to use this brand seamlessly across all your social media, your website, your estimates, your invoices. A quick word about naming. Yes, it can be as simple as your name and what you do, like Joe Schmo Illustration, Jane Doe Web Services, etc. But there's a couple things to be cautious about. One is the name available for your website for the domain name, and then for social media without having to append it with like a dash, Joe Smo dash something 123.com. Though there aren't really bad URLs, some of them are better than others. And will anyone have trouble spelling your name, like, I don't know, Perricone? So also note that depending on which state you're in, there are rules for how unique business names that aren't your own work. And sometimes you may need a business license if your name isn't in it, but it's sort of a state-by-state thing. Next thing you're going to want is an EIN. This is an employer identification number. So it's linked to your Social Security, and it's often used or required by many clients, especially large companies or institutions that you might be doing work for. You can get this link by you can get an EIN by going to irs.gov or by Googling get an EIN. And I just wanted to note real quick, Ed's dropping a link in the chat, but there is a lot of, if you Google get an EIN, you get a lot of garbage. So just be aware that there's a lot that isn't there. In fact, if you look at the websites, the IRS site, which looks like this, is free, and one that looks suspiciously similar is $250. It doesn't cost you anything, so don't fall for that. You don't need to.
Be careful.
So having EIN makes it really easy for you to fill out your W-9 forms, which clients you work for are going to use to collect information about who they're paying as a freelancer.
Oh, sorry, I fell behind in the slides. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. I was looking at my own thing. I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, I see the difference. You can pop ahead one more.
Oh, there we go.
One more. I'm actually slightly ahead of you. There it is. It's also useful in other docs like the ST4 in Massachusetts, which allows you as a business to register with, let's say, a printer as a reseller. So you don't get charged sales tax on jobs you're printing for a client, weird ticky tax stuff like that. An EIN also creates a small but not insignificant barrier so that your social security number isn't floating around out where somebody can use it, let's say to, I don't know, buy an RV in your name. And one other thing to remember is it's really tough to retrieve an EIN once you've already got it. So keep a record of it, email it to yourself, drop it under a profile in your contacts, just so you always have it. You can also use this to open up a business bank account or to get a business credit card. So look around for a bank with a free business checking account rather than an account that charges you fees. It's pretty easy to find one pretty much anywhere you are. Which you may want to ask, well, why would I want to bother getting a business bank account or credit card? And simply put, it allows you to track your business expenses separate from your personal, and tracking your business expenses is important. And because it's going to be important to keep your finances sort of simple and clear. And every time you have an expense, you can just do what Ed does.
You can keep your receipts in an old cigar box. All right, I'm busy here presenting my cigar box. You make a note of what it was for, and then you record it in whatever accounting software you want to use, or you can use just create a spreadsheet, depending on how complex things get. I recommend Wave apps, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And depending on the type of creative work you do, you can write off certain things. So right off the bat, most of you can write off art supplies, or the technology you use to get your work done, laptop, tablet, software, reference materials, and the latte that you had at Starbucks while you and a client discussed a project. But why should you track your expenses?
So according to this sheet, let's say it says you made 21,000 last year, and it's showing that you had business expenses totaling 7,450 bucks. Your expenses include 310 bucks for advertising. Maybe that was postcards and mailing, or it's ads on Instagram. Depreciated goods. Maybe you bought an iPad, or to sketch and Procreate, or supplies like drawing boards, scanner, subscription to Creative Cloud. You maybe expense part of your home office, part of your phone, part of your utilities. This is money that you're spending anyway on your business. And the fact is, if you expense it, the taxes you owe in this simplified example drop by almost 1,200 bucks. Without expensing anything, you would have had to pay around 3,200 bucks in taxes, but instead you're paying just over $2,000. So definitely be sure to track your expenses. And you may be wondering, do you have to pay for these items using your business credit card? No, absolutely not. This just helps you keep things separate, makes it easier to notice that you're spending too much on coffee. Keep those receipts, scan them, keep them organized, in case someone at the IRS suddenly has too much time on their hands. And it's not too late to start tracking your expenses for the year. Credit card statements will have an online record of charges, and it's really easy to start from there. But what's super important to note is that you should talk to a CPA. We are not CPAs. We're not licensed to give you any kind of real advice. And we're definitely not smart enough to do that either. And we can't promise that we're going to be getting everything right for every one of you in all of your various situations. So as far as finding a CPA, ask around, ask friends, preferably artist friends, so that the accountant you're hiring is someone who might be accustomed to dealing with your particular type of business. Although it's worth noting that artist types aren't really all that tricky, but barring that, it never really hurts to do.
Next up, collateral. You need something to help people find and remember you. So website, even if it's just behance.net to start, you need someplace to showcase your work. But these days, it's super easy to put together a portfolio website using Wix or Squarespace, or there's WordPress, which might be a little bit more advanced. Something that has your own unique URL. Be sure to link it to link to your social media accounts and include a way for someone to contact you. And also, my pet peeve, fill out your about page. Clients want to know who they're considering to hire. There's Linktree. As the number of links you want to share start racking up, there's websites, social media, online shop, 2 online shops, 3 online shops, your favorite Spotify playlist. Linktree is a useful way to serve up all of your links in one place. For example, Instagram only lets you post 1 link. I think we all know that by now, but what if today you're posting about a side project? Rather than constantly changing the link in bio, a single link sends your potential clients to a page full of your curated links. And on the back end, even the free version, like the one I use here, gives you some basic stats. The full version has way more functionality and full sets of stats. I don't really need it. At some point, I'll move up to it, but no, I don't really. Then let's talk about business cards. For when you meet people face to face, a business card, I know it sounds old school, but a business card is an important leave behind, and it can tell someone a lot about you and your business. And depending on how you design it and the quality of the printing, you can come across as creative, funny, successful, whatever you want. In other words, someone to consider hiring. Make sure to include contact info, website, and social media. And many people consider it good practice to leave some open space so a new contact can make a note after meeting you. Make sure that side of your card is uncoded. All right, you've got your best work up on your website. You've got those business cards, a bank account, and a cigar box, but don't forget about one of the most powerful ways to show off your work: social media. I'm sure you did not forget. Choose which platforms work for you, and then keep them updated and looking professional. One of the things we can't stress enough is how important a social media presence can be. Social media might seem just like a distraction to some, and for many it is, but it's an amazing way to connect to other creatives and get in front of potential clients. So let's make sure that your accounts are in shape. So there's, as an example, there's Instagram, Behance, Dribbble, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Pinterest, DeviantArt, and others like Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram Reels. The list goes on. Find where you're comfortable and post regularly. Interact with others, share interesting info that isn't just always about your latest sketch, and you'll build a community and a following. Just skip the personal photos so that your page stays consistently work-related. An exception a lot of artists make is for their Instagram stories. That's where you can show off your dog or how many pull-ups you can do. You might be thinking that Facebook is no longer much of a place, especially if you're young. You're like, Facebook is for old people. Well, it's not exactly the case, because if you share stuff from your business page to your personal page, or even if you just have a personal page and you show your work from time to time, you'll end up reminding friends and family that you're in the creative industry. And when someone asks them if they know a creative who can do what you do, you know, you'll immediately come to mind Uncle Morty or something like that. But if you're just going to leave things dormant or unfinished on a social media platform, don't send people there. Better yet, take it down if you're not going all in. Both Justin and I give you permission to just choose a few. You don't feel like a lot of people come to us and say, I can't keep up with all this social media. Well, you know what then? Choose the ones that you can keep up with. Just choose the ones you're most comfortable with and just post there and work on that. And maybe once you get a little more comfortable, then you'll start adding other platforms in, or a new one will be invented in 5 minutes anyway. Before you post your artwork online, make sure you watermark your work before that, both digitally and visually. In the format you see here, at 2020, copyright 2020, so used to hashtag, copyright 2023, or whatever year you first pushed the work out into the public domain, followed by your name or business name. Now that, 2023 would be for another piece of work, but this particular one I did in 2018, and I posted it to socials and on my website, which to some could be considered putting it out into the public domain. So this one is labeled with 2018. This serves to help, but not prevent, to keep people from infringing on your copyright. But it especially tells people who you are and how to find you so they can hire you. So here's an illustration I did recently with my visual watermark next to the metadata I've added to in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. If you hit Command, Shift, Option, I. So you got to use 4 fingers there.
So easy.
Yeah, I know. Command, Shift. I'm looking at my monitor. Command, Shift, Option, I. I had to write it down because there's no way I could speak it. Otherwise, I'd have to do it with my fingers and say, yeah. Oh, that's it. Okay.
It's this.
Yeah, best practice is to create a general template for your artwork. So it always has your name in it. It would have all the common things that you would have, like the link. Can you see my arrow right here? Yeah, okay. So right here, for example, there's the copyright info URL. That never changes, and that links you over to my comics website, and it'll link you to the page that tells you what to do if you want to license one of my pieces of art. And this is what people will find if they look at the metadata of my artwork, unless social media strips it out. So you want to create a general template and save it, and then just fill in the specific details per illustration.
Copyright schmopyright, Ed. Let's make some money. And yeah, I tried so hard. And to do that, we need work. For some, this is kind of this ever elusive unicorn, which is likely why it's the question we're asked most. How do I find work? A big part of what helps you find work is networking. You've heard it a million times, and I'm sure Scott and Ellen and literally everyone at the Career Center is nodding their heads in agreement. But it really is one of the most important things you can do when pursuing that unicorn. So think art and design events. Okay, great. I'm with a bunch of creatives that, oh, there's the head, there's the nod. Thanks, Scott. So, you know, if you're thinking about design events, it's a bunch of people who are doing the same things I do. What good is that? Well, maybe you're not selling to them, or can you? Because maybe you meet somebody who may not be great at, let's say, animation. Or let's say you meet somebody who's good at animation, and then another person who's maybe good at character design. Suddenly you found these creative complements to you as, let's say, a storyboard artist, and the people who do the things that you don't. So why is this important? Well, you can find clients by meeting other creatives who need the sorts of things that you excel. Yeah, let me say this again. You can find clients by meeting other creatives who need to offer the sorts of things you excel at to their clients. So in return, you find creatives who do the things you don't. And now you can say yes when your client asks you to help them with a part of their business that maybe isn't your forte. So rather than just going out to find clients, in addition, you'll be finding creatives who you can start this sort of reciprocal relationship with. As our work becomes increasingly dispersed and complex, it's really good to know people who do stuff that you don't.
And RISD has a number of opportunities to network. There's a RISD Career Center networking page with tons of info and opportunities. Scott, if you want to chime in at some point during this, you feel free. It includes advice on how to approach networking, as well as RISD related resources you can take advantage of. And RISD alumni regional clubs and affinity groups. These groups provide an opportunity for alumni to connect with each other through their professions, geographic regions where they're living or working, or even just shared interests. And RISD Network. This is a new initiative from RISD Alumni Relations that was launched a few springs ago, right? The platform helps foster connections between RISD students and hundreds of alumni around the world by facilitating career-related conversations and mentorship. So Justin dropped in some links in the chat, and you already have this connection that's catered to your needs. We encourage you to take advantage of it.
So a big part of freelancing is being able to sell yourself. And one of the most important attributes is projecting confidence. So this means no more posting on social media, really anything that demeans your work or knocks your ability to solve problems for your clients. What you create, only you can do in that way. So only you can make the decisions you make. And once you have the confidence that what you create has value to clients, then you're going somewhere. Ed has a really cool example of this.
I have a cousin who would come to my parents' house for holidays while he studied at Harvard. And since my mom's an amazing cook, he was there religiously for a few years. And every time we saw him, he would confidently announce his plan to move to Hollywood to compose music after graduation. And he was a great guy, and we would all just nod our heads and smile at his unlikely dream. And then fast forward to 2017, when he received 2 Academy Awards, Best Original Score and Best Original Song for City of Stars for La La Land. And then he was just nominated again in 2023 for Babylon. His drive, coupled with his talent, got him to where he wanted to go. So how about you? Figure out what your goals are and then go after them. There's no room for uncertainty and self-deprecation. Tuck your art under your arm and run for the goal line. Figure out what your potential client is looking for and craft a message that speaks to their objectives. And remember your entrepreneurial spirit, which is why you need to have an elevator pitch. That means always having a relevant project to talk about at the ready, even if it's about something that's not relatively recent. You should be able to confidently talk about an interesting project in 30 seconds or less. Better yet, keep a few in your back pocket and choose the one that fits best with the audience in your elevator. And by the way, experiences may vary. Your opportunity may not take place in an actual elevator. Probably it'll be a social event, a conference, or an airport bar.
So now you're ready for your jumpstart. This is really how anyone in almost any field can get started with something, a client, a project, or maybe even just a step in the right direction. The idea of starting off as a freelancer is incredibly daunting to many people, but we're hoping that we can provide you with the jumpstart that you need to get things going for yourself. And one of the first avenues that many people think about when they want to get going is crowdsourcing and competitions, because there's a very low barrier to entry. You get to show off your work, maybe get a bit of practice. But this is a very big no-no. Sites like, let's say, 99 Designs and Fiverr are generally just bad news. They degrade the industry and kind of make us all look like we'll work for nothing or next to nothing. And how are you expected to compete against people on those cheap sites? Well, you compete by creating custom quality work that we can guarantee is original. By working with your clients as a partner rather than just this one-off, you're able to figure out how to sell it's important to figure out how to sell yourself so your potential client recognizes the value that you're bringing them in their growing business. And anyone who can't see that is more than welcome to buy a $5 logo. So with that in mind, here are some ways that you can get a real legit jumpstart. First and foremost, obviously, you can find a paying client. They exist, they're out there. And while it can seem impossible to find clients, if you look in the right places, you'll start to uncover a world of opportunities.
And some of them are unique places. There are a lot of opportunities here on this page. So it all depends on your interests and your comfort level. I'll give you some examples of what we mean and how to think through this list. So for example, creative conferences where you can find your creative complements would be like, if you're an illustrator, ICON, the Illustration Conference, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, that's SCBWI. Designers, that's How Design, AIGA Design Conference, Adobe Max, and many more. For meetups, for creatives, that's think like the hashtag Kidlit Art, if you're an artist who does Kidlit. That was kind of dumb to say. Local businesses and restaurants, think about all those awful menus you could redesign for them. Publisher weekly job moves. Book illustrators and writers, get on the mailing list for publishers, weeklies, daily emails. Ask a mutual friend to introduce you. That's either in real life or on LinkedIn. Parties. Everyone you meet is a possible connection. Everyone. So don't talk down about yourself and your work. Speak confidently about the type of work you do. Again, channel that entrepreneurial spirit. And it doesn't have to be gross, like you're selling to everyone you meet. You can be subtle about it. It's possible.
The next opportunity that we're both really big fans of is pro bono work. One thing that doesn't get talked enough about are the big pluses of doing this type of work. You find a nonprofit that you believe in. It could be, say a charity, house of worship, animal shelter, whatever, and you offer them your services. Worst case scenario, you've helped a worthy cause and you have a great new piece for your online portfolio and social media. But on the plus side, if the work is good enough, they might find money in their budget to actually hire you. And additionally, when the board of directors sees the quality of your work, they may hire you to do things for their for-profit companies, for example. Although the work might be pro bono, you should obviously still treat this organization just as professionally as you would with a paying client. So you're going to start with a contract, and at the end of the project, you send them a bill with everything just zeroed out. This way, they're able to see the value, the actual numerical value of what they're receiving and recognize the amount that you get going into the project. One thing to remember, though, is that services that you offer through pro bono aren't tax deductible the way that, say, a donation is. Here are some examples of places that might be looking for pro bono work. And I can say from personal experience, I have been doing some of my best clients that I've ever had have been pro bono clients that turned into paying clients. So, however, this might not be the right path for some. That's fine, depending on what you do or what you're interested in. So what about a personal project? Everyone that's creative has some kind of weird idea buzzing around in their head that they just want to explore. So why not find the time to do that? Personal projects exist no matter what type of work you do. They're a great way to have a creative outlet after working all day, or just to get your business moving again. Maybe you want to pivot and explore some new types of work, like, let's say an illustrator starting to focus on animation. Redesign a brand your way, come up with zines, do some comics, do gig posters, just passion projects. What are you passionate about? Document it, post it to social media, and see if it has legs, even though you expect others, even though you might expect others to recognize the genius of what you put out. Don't be surprised if it doesn't make any waves. So just try another project and then another. One day, oddly enough, during a dog walk, I had this just idea pop into my head for something I wanted to try, this technique in Illustrator. So I got home, I whipped it up, and I made it into this gig poster. It was all digital, wasn't even real. And it was a gig poster for a band that I was listening to. What the hell? Later that night, I posted it to Flickr and tagged it with the band name. And a few months later, I got a call from an email from the band's manager asking to license it for their tour, for their shirts. And just like that, my work was being sold by Rah Rah Riot, my one and only licensing deal ever. It was fantastic. So, I've spent thousands of dollars seeing bands and buying records and merch, but to this day, Rah Rah Riot's the only band I've actually made money from. So,
I love that. Here are two examples of passion projects. Lim Hang Sui apparently loves cats. His Instagram feed over the last many years now is about 90% feline. I'm exaggerating probably, but if I am, it's 89%. And we could do an entire webinar just about the evolution of his career as an illustrator. And I've just been watching him on Instagram just grow and change and try things, and I've watched things stick. And his love of cats, and it helps that he knows there's a huge cat loving audience, by the way. And his creativity has led to a business that includes prints, shirts, bags, socks, skateboards, and more. And then there's Chris Piasek, who challenged himself well over a decade ago to do a drawing every day. And now he's got books, pins, posters, and a cache of big time clients because of where the project took him. He kept growing professionally and creatively to the point where he started getting noticed, which is really pretty cool. And with a huge catalog of daily digital images, Chris is starting to launch some of them as NFTs. Recently, Chris has been doing a lot of videos about being a freelance illustrator, including how-to videos. And so if you're an illustrator, you should check out his YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. Now, all this isn't to say that this is a surefire way to any kind of payday, but at the very least, you're putting your effort into doing what you love. Actively working at something you're passionate about is nothing but positive when it comes to a career. Parenthetically, I'll say that it's important that you first put in the work to make sure there's an audience and a market for those goods. But what if you don't have a new amazing idea and you just want to become better at what you do? At the very least, an opportunity can come from learning something new. We talked about finding creative complements. Well, what about becoming your own? Take a Skillshare class in animation or marketing. Take a Udemy class in coding or Photoshop. Follow other designers or illustrators on Instagram and TikTok for quick tutorials. There are countless free and cheap resources out there for those who want to learn new skills that you can use as part of your passion project, or just to feel more confident and well-versed in what you can offer to clients. It's a great first step to being your own creative complement. I'm going to pause for a second. I know this whole finding clients and passion projects thing can be subjects for their own full-day conferences, but hopefully we're sparking some new ideas to give you a jumpstart or a reboot for your freelance career.
And just like that, we're on to the big stuff. Let's talk money.
Okay, let's lock the doors first.
And the most common question that we get is, how much do I charge? And our most common response, and often the most common response that you hear from this is, well, hourly or flat rate. And it just depends. Most creatives have an hourly rate that they work with. If you're a web designer, but you also design logos, those rates might be different. You take that rate, you multiply it by the number of hours you expect the project to take, and then you give the client that number. Exceptions to this are made for certain projects, and that might have too many moving parts or are just simply based on hours, such as maintaining social media, website updates, meetings, consulting, retainer work, etc. But the question becomes, where is your hourly rate coming from? Did you make it up? Did you put it into one of those online calculators that has so many variables that it can't possibly give you a good answer? A good first step here is to start by asking a colleague, but take their advice with a grain of salt. If you're a logo designer and you ask Milton Glaser for his hourly rate, it's going to be tremendously higher than you ask someone more in line with your experience. And Mr. Glaser deserves to get paid very well. He's got decades of experience, including highly successful logos, graphic designs, and posters. But even still, we tend to underprice ourselves. So let's just say that you've talked to a couple of friends and you've settled on a price of $50 an hour for your work. And you found some success. You've got clients, you're paying the bills, you're putting some money away, things are good. Let's say that you're able to fill your days with work. That's $400 a day. Many of us would love to be in that same boat. You're working full time, you're making $400, but let's make a little change. Instead of charging $50 an hour, let's say you charge $100. So some leads might balk at that price, and maybe some of your former clients don't send as much work. In fact, now you're only billing about half the hours you were before. So now you're in the same position, right? Well, no. Actually, while you're making the same amount of money, you've also gained 4 hours of your day. This is time that can be put into more client work, into side projects, looking for new clients, creating content, riding bikes, cleaning up after your kids, or just otherwise not undervaluing your time. Now, you might not be able to charge $100 an hour, but think about not undervaluing the work undervaluing the work you have to offer. I mean, after all, your goal should be to find clients who recognize your value and are willing to pay properly for it. The value that you're bringing to the table is probably the most important thing when it comes to pricing a project. The same way that your time has value to you, your time has value to a client. And always remember that the work you do is benefiting them. And it's incredibly important to remember exactly how it's benefiting your clients when you're determining a price. So pricing for value is kind of the foundation for a very different way of thinking about price. So instead of figuring out what a project is worth to you, as in what is my rate and how long is it going to take me to do it, think about what the value your work is going to bring to your client. And this concept might seem completely shifty and a little bit sketchy, and I'm not going to lie, I completely agree. But there's one thing to remember when it comes to pricing as we go forward, and it's simply that price is completely arbitrary. The rules for pricing are not hard and fast. The perfect price doesn't exist for anything. After all, a fair price is what a customer is willing to pay. I mean, yes, you can consult pricing guides like the Graphic Artist Guild's Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook. And, that'll help by giving you a range, but that's the point. Depending on circumstances, as well as those of your clients, you can be anywhere within that range. I mean, here's just an example of how arbitrary it can be. You can go to any 7-Eleven in Boston and buy a bottle of water for $1.50, but you hop on the train and in 15 minutes you're at the airport, and that same bottle of water costs $3.50. Is it any better? No. Why not charge $20? Well, there's also they're smart enough to realize that they're not going to sell enough for that price for it to be worth it. And buyers and sellers don't see enough value in a $20 bottle of water. So value means that both parties are gaining something in the transaction. The price of the water is not too unreasonable to the buyer. The seller maximizes their profit. It's a balance. We know what happens when the price is too high. No water is sold, simple as that. But if the price is too low, they can't keep it in stock, or it becomes an issue of quality. Like, maybe they're just getting bottles and refilling them in a bathroom sink. I mean, say, for example, you're apartment hunting and you keep finding really nice 2-bedroom places in town for about $2,600. But then in your search, you come across a gem for asking for half that. But you don't know that this is a new landlord that's just finished a reno on their property. They're super eager to get a tenant. So they figure, we'll just come up with a number that feels low enough to attract a lot of interest and seem like a really great deal. They just want somebody in there and they don't want to mess up this opportunity. But it's been on the market for 6 months. Why is that? Well, yeah, that's not how this works. You as a tenant have about 1,000 questions. The first being, what's so wrong with this place that they're charging half of what everyone else is? In a market like this, and the kind of like the creative world, there's a certain expectation within reason of where a price is going to land. And if it's well below that, it comes with huge issues of trust. In the case for freelancers, a super low price is going to come with the thought of, are they actually capable of doing this work? Have they done a project like this before? Will they pay any attention to me and my project? Can they deliver on time? Will they deliver anything? So let's dig in a bit more and talk about how to price your work based on the value you bring to the different clients with the following example. We're going to compare two very similar projects pitched to two very different companies. The first is a local pizza shop named Blanco's. They're interested in having you do an illustration on a box for their 50th anniversary. They've got good pizza, they've got a reasonable deadline. So after thinking it over, you figure this is going to take you 10 to 15 hours. So just for the sake of argument, we'll use that $100 an hour from before. You've come up with a price for $1,500. Fantastic. We're going to just call this the baseline rate for right now. Now, a week later, you get a call from the head of marketing at Domino's, and they're also interested in you having an Illustrator pizza box for them. Their ask isn't really any different. One illustration, similar deadline. And so you think it's going to be the same, 10, 15 hours. I'm going to call it exactly the same. $1,500. I mean, look, it's the same type of work with the same deadline that will take you the same amount of time. So the price should be the same, right? Well, no. Both companies are not deriving the same value from that project. Blanco's is a mom and pop pizza place, while Domino's has 6,000 stores. They made, in 2022, they made $1.6 billion in profit. Suddenly this $1,500 seems kind of ridiculous. You're knowing that your work is going to be printed on millions of boxes. It's going to be seen by millions of people, both when they get their delivery and also likely in advertisements. So the value that Domino's is deriving from your work means that you need to bump up that price. Their work, the value for your work is vastly higher than it is for Little Blanco's. A really simple way to think about this is the more eyes, the more impact, the more value to the client. So in the end, Blanco's might actually fall below the base rate because they're such a small company and maybe they can't pay that $1,500. But for you to qualify that drop of price, you would want to assume a drop in deliverables. Let's say maybe fewer sketches, fewer rounds, revisions, etc. And by the way, that below the baseline rate for Blanco should never fall so low that you feel like you're taking a loss. While Domino's would soar above that baseline. So think of it as baseline with like plus or minus extenuating circumstances. Other extenuating circumstances might be limited use. If you're doing something for someone and they say, yeah, you can't really use this any other way, the price is going to go up. If they want to extend the licensing into, let's say, shirts and stickers and other swag, that price would go up. And the price can fluctuate also depending on other details, such as whether it's a rush job, is it limited use? Do they want to use the art for other things, like I was mentioning, like posters? We'll talk about this more when we're talking about tiers when we're pricing a project. Also, fun fact about this logo. Remember we had the discussion about Fiverr? Well, Ed and I, for a different talk, we wanted to see what a cheap logo meant. So to see just how bad a $5 logo was, it was actually $7, if you see there. We hired someone on Fiverr to design us one. And we found somebody that had a ton of good reviews and, you know, the turnaround was decent enough. We coughed up our $7 and we gave them some really basic instructions and yeah, we got a pretty decent logo. You know, it's not winning awards, but I definitely have seen worse used by real companies. So this should be fine to use, right? Well, it only took about 2 minutes of Googling to discover that the designer had completely ripped off a stock illustration, which I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess they did not pay for, meaning that any and all liability would fall on me, the client. Fantastic. But think about it. What did you expect for something so below market rate? And now you can see firsthand what a client might be wary of when you come in super low just to get the gig.
And you can use this example to explain to potential clients why they're taking a risk when they use ultra cheap work.
And now let's get comfortable because it's going to get awkward.
Oh, come on, Justin, that's silly. Artists are never awkward. Do you want to avoid an uncomfortable money conversation? Get some ideas of budget early on. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, find out as many details as you can before you quote the job. For example, before I give any number, I send back a list of questions. Even if they've given me every answer already in their first message, I still will ask more questions. Excuse me. So for example, like, how fast do you need it? What sort of rights do you need? Is it work for hire? If so, why? Who will be making the decisions? The person you're talking to, a committee? That's a red flag. Do you have a set budget? So trying to figure out where a client expects or needs your numbers to fall can make you feel like you swallowed an anvil. What if I come in too high? What if I come in too low and leave wads of money on the table? I've been there, in fact, a little too often. I'm still sometimes there. So to save you from making yourself sick over pricing, we're going to help you out with some conversation starters. So next screen, feel free to take a screenshot if you think it's going to help you. Any of these should help get the ball rolling. Just don't wait until they're about to hang up before starting the conversation. So the first one is, I think the last thing we need to get to is budget. Do you have a number in mind before I work up my estimate?
Let's talk about budget now. Do you have one that you're working with?
I'm going to work up some numbers next and then get back to you. Do you have a certain budget?
As for budget, are you looking to spend, let's say, 500, 2,500, or 5,000? Your answer will tell me how much work you're looking to get from me. And the price also helps anchor them as the lowest price they can expect.
If the client is able to tell you their budget, obviously that will be very helpful, as it shows you how much they're looking to do. They're actually looking to do. Low budget means that some of the things they're asking for either can't be done under that budget or they'll have to be modified, which is why it's usually a good idea to create tiers in your estimate. Here's what you get for the low budget, and at a higher budget, we can also get X, Y, and Z done and do it faster. If a client has told you their budget, lay out what you can do for that number. We'll call that as requested. Along with that, show them what a higher budget might offer them, but only if you think it would add value to the project. You're not trying to sell a 12-course meal to someone who came in for a salad. It's more like you're suggesting adding some grilled chicken or a piece of salmon. In this very simplified example, the client has asked for a 10-second animation starring 3 original characters in one scene with a budget of $7,300. Because you think it would tell the story better, you also quote them the cost for a 15-second animation involving a change of scene. Be ready to support your reasons. On the other hand, if they didn't have a set budget and you're unsure where you think you should be with your price, multiple tiers are again a great way to go. The as requested level is where you feel your price should be, considering all the aspects of the request for proposal or RFP. In case your as requested level is too high for the client, or to give them something to compare to, the economy tier gives them less for less money. It's important to remember that negotiation is a give and take. If they want a lower price, something has to give elsewhere. That could mean a longer deadline or a reduction of deliverables. There's so much more to say about pricing, which is why we do a deeper dive in our How to Price Your Work webinar. But so that this doesn't turn into a 3-hour presentation, it's time to move on. But I think you guys get the gist.
We're happy to answer questions as well.
Yep.
So the next thing up is just you want to keep yourself organized. Create a template estimate, the brand you've already created, contact info at the top, some nice text underneath about how much you appreciate this company reaching out to you. Use it to quickly put together quotes and then hang on to it for the next one. Same for contracts, invoices, anything else you want to automate. Copy, paste is your friend. The more organized you are, the quicker you and more easily you can respond to inquiries. And if you have to, try bouncing it off a friend to make sure it reads right and feels the way you want it to. And when it's time to start your project, you're going to want to use a contract every time. And you're going to want to use that contract even with family, especially with family. A contract is one of those ways of saying, look, I'm a professional, you're a professional, let's just do things the right way. It contains the expectations for you as well as what's expected of your client or uncle on the project.
On the rare occasion a client balks at having to work with a contract, frame it in a way that shows why it's important for them. A contract details what they should expect from the creative, time and work-wise, and also about what rights they will own once the project is completed and paid for. How can they possibly say no to that? And for the creative's benefit, which that's you, the contract can clearly communicate that feedback must come within, say, 2 days, or the deadline will get moved back, or that until final payment is received, you retain the rights to the work, and so on. You can find sample contracts online through the AIGA or the Graphic Artists Guild's handbook. Wherever you find them, you'll want to make your own modifications. Depending on the type of work you're doing, you should talk with friends to find out what they put in their contracts. You can watch videos from creatives to get their suggestions. And if you don't understand what, say, an indemnification clause is for, find out.
So speaking of getting the job, it's now time to get paid. And for that, you'll need to send and then track an invoice. Ed has already mentioned it, but definitely take a look at waveapps.com. It's invoicing and bookkeeping software. It's totally free. And they have an app that you can use on your phone to keep track of expenses. You can take credit card payments, follow up on invoices, scan receipts. We've both been using it for years and love it. It's also really important to remember that good service matters. That's what keeps clients coming back almost as much as doing great work. Throughout the project, be a good communicator. Respond quickly to messages and update the client periodically.
And this can be a problem spot for me sometimes. So I challenge myself to make sure that my clients never have to check in. And if I ever receive a message wondering about the status of a project, then it's a motivator for me to do better.
So follow up after each project and make sure that they're happy with the outcome. So for instance, if it's a print job, keep track of it and then follow up, make sure that it's arrived. It's also a good time to ask whether you can share the project online, if now's the time. Of course, that right is already expressed in the contract that you wrote, but it's always a nice courtesy to check to make sure it's the proper time. Keep in touch with your clients so that you stay top of mind. Put them on a holiday card list, send a postcard, send out an occasional email newsletter. Remind them how great it was to work with you. And don't forget, while you're waiting to get busy with client projects, keep creating. For instance, you can sell prints, you can sell stickers, one-of-a-kind creations or digital goods on all sorts of places. Etsy, Creative Market, Gumroad, Spoonflower, Society6, Redbubble, something I made up that you probably wouldn't even notice. You could sign up for RISD Made or get a table at crafts fairs like RISD Craft.
Print on demand is a good place to test things out. If they work, move them into somewhere more profitable. For example, if you're designing shirts and you don't know whether they'll sell, instead of paying a lot of money to print in many sizes and colors and styles and then storing them in your garage, a site like Redbubble will do print on demand for you. Of course, you'll make only a small portion for that benefit. Sell the shirts for $25 and you'll make something like $5 or maybe a little more than that. Once you know the artwork, the shirts are successful, you do a print run and fulfill the orders yourself. You'll sell them on Etsy for $25 plus shipping and you'll make about $20 a shirt. Or here's something I'm trying now. You can partner with sites like that integrate with Etsy or your own online shop like Printify. A sale on Etsy triggers a printer you've chosen on Printify to produce the item and drop ship it to the client. Just be forewarned, sometimes there just isn't as much demand as you were expecting, and you'll have to expand or try new things, like try offering bananas and cherries. Sorry. An emerging marketplace that many of us have heard about for selling your digital work, art, music, writing, directly to clients, think of it like owning your own gallery, are NFT marketplaces. There are many platforms such as OpenSea, Gamma, Haylayer, Foundation, etc., and they're very attractive as the artist has full control over the selling of their work, while also being able to get a commission on every subsequent resale. Be sure to study up before you dive in. Speaking of emerging, let's talk for a minute about AI generative artwork. You know what I'm talking about. Take 5 minutes to type in a description and out pops artwork that would have taken you 15 hours to create. Okay, the technology isn't new. It's just finally reached the masses and anyone can get their hands on it now. Is it going to take work away from creatives? Yes. Is it a game changer? Also yes. Should you run away from it? No. It's a technology that's not going away. So keep your eye on it and learn how to make it work for you. But just know that there are plenty of downsides to it as a creative tool. No, I'm not talking about people with feet for hands, rather designs and illustrations without history and experience, without a soul. It's important to note that the Copyright Office won't allow registration for AI-generated art at this time.
So this is an example of what a real live Ed-shaped human can do with this prompt. And this is what a real live computer farm can come up with. So AI can really only take you so far. For now, what is wrong with her eyes? Ugh.
Right, soulless. The technology, the rules, regulations, and best practices are still in their infancy. But if you want to learn more, a lot more, and you should, we're dropping a link, Justin's going to drop a link to a very recent AI ML summit put together by a number of creative organizations. I highly recommend you at least watch the keynote. Steven Zapata, who's an illustrator, lays out the issues very clearly along with ways forward. Some of the sponsoring organizations have recently, as in the last few weeks, been meeting with representatives on Capitol Hill to inform on the impact of AI and the repercussions that have begun to be felt. And I'm happy to talk more about AI during the Q&A, but it's important to note that no policy changes will come or even possible until 2025 at the earliest, which was mind-blowing to me.
And so as we're rounding home here, it's important to say a few things about the work you're creating. And that is simply work smart, always keep learning and strive for improvement. We can always do better no matter what it is that we do. And remember to have that confidence in the value that you and your work have to offer.
If you're not confident about working with clients, it's a good idea to figure out why. Are you uncomfortable negotiating and talking to people? Perhaps you should get an agent and leave the negotiating to her or him. Or find a company that needs your talents. Do you need someone to hold your feet to the fire or help you come up with a marketing plan? There's a person for that, Elise Benin, the marketing mentor. Get on her newsletter list. There are others as well. I just love her. Are you worried that your work isn't good enough? If so, take some time to work out how you might improve or fill the gaps in your knowledge with online learning, like we talked about earlier. Start now and enlist a few creatives to start a critique group. Most importantly, remember to run your business like it's a business. Sometimes we forget that that's what it is because many of us are lucky enough to be running a business doing something that we love.
I'm just going to go ahead and start just, from the beginning. Somebody mentions, I don't have a business. Can I apply for an EIN? And then as far as the tax deduction goes, what does an expense mean? Can it be art material fees? Furthermore, right now the only money they're earning is from, let's say, a job. So I would say that yes, anybody can have an EIN, and this is where things get squishy as far as, are you a business? Technically, you can be a business and not be making profit for a few years, especially if it's a smaller business. If you're constantly running in the red for years upon years, thousands of dollars, that's going to throw up flags. This is definitely one of those things you want to talk to a CPA about. But in general, when we're talking about expensing it, these are expenses from a business expense. So let's say your art supplies are, physical art supplies, let's say canvas, brushes, paints, and you are selling your wares at craft fairs. Congratulations, you are a business. Get your EIN, track your expenses. And now, you make $5,000 selling paintings. You spent $4,000 in, or $1,000, let's say, in expenses. Now your total income is only $4,000. That's all you're going to be taxed against. So it all really just depends on how you're doing it. It doesn't mean, and there's year-to-year things. You can keep buying canvases and 1 year not sell very much, and that's okay. You can kind of run in the red for a little while, but you're definitely going to want to talk to a CPA a little bit more about that. As far as what that means for you and your specific thing. Two questions here is, where can I find a freelance job? That's a very good question. I think a lot of what we were talking about in here is that, where do you find these jobs? So it is looking and kind of getting out there and looking for it. There's always, going back to things like Craigslist and sort of like job postings and stuff like that. There are always people looking for freelancers in that way. So that's a way to do it. There's a million different places. I wish there was a way where I could say, this is how you get work. We try to do that. Unfortunately, there's no good answer. The other one here that's interesting, what's the difference between freelance and self-employment? Same thing. If you're a freelancer, you are by definition self-employed, which, as we were talking, there's a lot of pluses to this, a lot of negatives. So definitely something to think about. Ed, one here is about where can I find freelance contracts? Is that something you want to take? I think you.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to. Freelance contracts. So again, we mentioned that you can go to the AIGA, their website, and look for contracts there. You can do a search online. I don't know where, I can't promise that the ones you find are going to be, tight. The Graphic Artists Guild, their handbook has contracts, their boilerplate contracts that you would go into and make changes based on who you are. But there are contracts, for freelance illustrators, for designers, etc., and interior designers. And so you would make modifications there. Anna, what kind of work do you do? Can you put that in the chat, please? And what you want to do is you want to connect, as we mentioned, with other creatives, so that graphic design, so that you can compare and you can ask for help. It's all about community. I'm so big on being part of a community, whether it's alumni, whether it's AIGA or wherever. Become a part of that community. And that doesn't just mean you look at their website from time to time. That means you go to events and you connect with people. They could be virtual events, and you connect with people, and those become people that you can talk to and find out and ask questions of. And that's the most important thing, in my opinion, for when you're becoming when you're going off on your own, because you don't want to be on your own. That's the last thing you want. Scott, do you want to?
I just wanted to, yeah, I'll chime in real quick on the contract aspect too. Just real quick, a few thoughts. So one name I would put out there to all of you is Greg Cannon, who is a RISD alum, actually, studied FAV at RISD, and then went on to get their law degree at Northeastern. And they run a business called The Legal Artist, which is built around providing legal services to creatives. And Greg has offered a talk for our office in the past, all about writing contracts as a creative freelancer. So we encourage you to attend that talk in the future, especially if you're going to be around next year at RISD, or actually if you're an alum, we'll probably do it virtually, so you'll be able to tap into it either way. Greg's website, again, The Legal Artist, also has a blog on there that gives a lot of sort of like entry-level basic tips on all kinds of legal things, but contracts included. So that's a great resource. And then if you can join us for our next iteration of his contract talk, I would definitely recommend it.
I want to jump in. Thank you, Scott. I want to jump into Leo's question. So you need to do what you need to do to survive, to thrive as an artist. And that might mean that you don't get to be an artist full-time while you work up your portfolio, while you work up a business, while you make a name for yourself. So Leo, I feel you. I totally agree. Like, I don't want to work for a company either. That was when I walked out of RISD. I wanted to be a freelancer, and that's all. I wanted to make sure I owned everything I did. I was very, very particular about it. So I get where you're coming from, but if you need to, if you don't have the means for it, if you're not independently wealthy, then you're going to have to do what you need to do. And that's kind of like Chaucer's everyman. He did what he had to do to survive and provide for his family. That's the everyman, the one who sacrifices. And you work towards becoming the freelance artist while you're doing you're sacrificing. And I'm sorry, that's not a great answer.
I think it's super common too. It's something that a lot of people feel that exact same thing, which is that pressure to be a success and that pressure to do what you want to be doing. And it's really hard to just say, I'm going to do everything on my own. I'm going to sort of take that leap. Like Ed's saying, if you're not independently wealthy, it's almost impossible to do that. So the idea of working that job that you don't love and using your off time to build that freelance career, absolutely, man. That's to me, that's like the bread and butter of becoming a freelancer. I think for a lot of folks is that I don't think a lot of folks come out of school like that and just boom, I'm doing it. There's a slow ramp up that often means jobs that aren't the greatest or that fulfilling, that you can then slowly turn it into what you want it to be.
Right,
Yeah,
but never stop creating. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
no, I just wanted to say, I think this both of your comments are spot on, and I just always kind of remind people to think about your career is fluid. It's a process. It's not like at any one point in time you've either made it or you haven't. You know what I mean? You're making those small incremental changes that are building towards your goals, and those goals may shift over time too, and that's okay as well. So I just think it's really helpful to kind of take that step back and have that zoom out. And if you need to take small incremental moves towards your goals, that's fine. And like you've been saying a lot of times, that's the wise move.
So I just put a name in the chat. Renee Carrilla, you totally remind me of her. She worked for a creative agency down in Boston for years and years. And while she worked there, she worked on her portfolio. She worked on her style. She's an illustrator, and she worked on building and figuring out what she's best at doing. And then a few years ago, she had built up enough of a following and enough upcoming work that she went freelance. And that's exactly how it should go. If you can take a job at a creative place, that's better than, waiting tables where you'll just be exhausted at the end. I mean, you'll be exhausted no matter what, sorry. But something manual, no construction jobs, please, because you'll be way too tired at the end of the day to create.
Another question here, is there any benefit to becoming an LLC? This is another one that's a really good one to sort of definitely ask a CPA, but I can give you the advice that I was given from a number of folks, both lawyers and otherwise, is that in general, doing the work that, let's say, Ed and I do, which is graphic arts, no, because an LLC is a protector. So for instance, if something were to happen, if somebody were to sue you because of something you did wrong, they can't go after, the LLC provides sort of a barrier between being able to go after sort of your personal assets. What's important to remember with the work that we're doing, let's say, just as an example, as a graphic designer or an illustrator, there's no physical harm that can become anything that we do. There is no logo that is so bad that it is going to physically injure a person. Similarly, if somebody said, your logo was so god-awful, my company went under, you have a paper to go, then why did you approve the logo? So you kind of have a paper trail in a way of sort of proving that your work itself was always approved. Like for instance, if you were in a roofer and your roof can collapse on somebody, can cause injury. There's a lot of other things where having an LLC makes sense. But for something in the creative world, it is less important because there is that paper trail.
Less so, but sorry.
That said, like, it's always worth talking to a CPA. At one point in my freelance career, I was kind of on this verge of it almost making sense for me to run payroll for myself as its own entity, at which point I would have either become an LLC or an S Corp. It was this whole like detailed, weird CPA thing that only a CPA understood. So talk to them. Ed, sorry, I stepped on you.
No, it's okay. I have a dissenting view on that because specifically because Karen is an interior designer. I have a very good friend who designed, I forget if it was like for someone's wedding or something, designed centerpieces. One of them fell and broke and cut the client, and she sued her and dragged it through the courts for years. And so you do have to kind of pay attention to worst case scenarios. I want to jump into imposter syndrome from Karen as well. Great question. It's funny because for years I didn't really know what the word was for that feeling, and now it's talked about so much lately. And again, what I recommend is community, is to be part of, to find your group of people who can give you input for your work, give you the oohs and ahs when you show finished pieces, and bolster you, because we're all kind of working on our own sometimes, and we need other people around to remind us that what we do is good. And I have my mom sometimes on Instagram saying, "This isn't so nice, Eddie," and I really appreciate that. You know, and of course she's going to say that, but there are other people who you can trust who will give you, you know, the who you need to have around you, who will give you the actual positive, but also with some negative. You know, the cookie, the good, the
Yeah,
good,
the
the bad, the
compliment
good.
sandwich. And
Yeah,
honestly, I don't. I think I can say for myself, I don't know if it ever really goes away. I think there's just some of us who are wired in a way to kind of always feel
yeah,
like we suck, and that's fine. Like I'm still able to be successful thinking I suck. And that's just the way it is. Obviously, I've gotten a little bit better. I feel a little more confident in talking because I realize the work I do has value. But yeah, I think it's for some folks, it's always just going to be there, and that's okay.
you know, I start out a project sometimes thinking I have no idea how I'm going to do this, and thinking like, who am I to be able to promise to this client that I can figure out this logo project or whatever it might be. But I know that I've gone through it enough times that it doesn't actually hurt me anymore because I know every time I start a new project or a challenging project, I'm going to feel that way. But I know every time I've done it, I've gone through it, and I've been really happy with where I ended up, where the project ended up. Karen, oh boy, I have a good friend, artist, who also does political cartoons. And yeah, I mean, you have to just keep submitting. And I'm sorry, I know I sound like a one-trick pony here, but you have to also connect with people who can get you in. Or, you know, there are smaller political magazines, I put in quotes, that are looking for submissions, and maybe the first 5 you send aren't quite right for them, and you should do your research to figure out what approach you need to take that they would then accept. And that's a way in, on a smaller magazine. But while you're trying to get in there, hopefully they're nice to you and they give you feedback, and then that person can then become kind of a mentor to you. But you have to one of the things is some of us lack the confidence to put people out. Like I spend half a conversation going, I'm so sorry to bother you. But and I'm learning that people love to help other people. They do. And if they don't want to help you, you'll know pretty quickly. So take it for face value if they're still sitting there listening, or they're responding to your emails, that they actually want to help.
Specifically talking about that one too, the first thing that popped into my head is social media, specifically for political cartooning, because it's so, by its nature, it wants to be shared. So thinking back to what Ed was saying as far as making sure your name is attached to the work, et cetera, make sure that people can find you and that the username is on there and accessible. So somebody's like, hey, I saw this cartoon you did. Let's check. I feel like that's the type of thing that has a real opportunity for just a organic type of client generation.
Yeah, to build on that idea too, I think that's a great thought. And pay attention to how people are hashtagging, especially successful political cartoonists who have had their work successfully featured. How are they sharing their work? How are they hashtagging? And then you can be paying attention. That's essentially an online community for the form of work that you're making, and that's going to increase its exposure and increase the chances that the right person sees it. So I totally agree with all the feedback so far. I just wanted to add that piece.
There's a caveat to that.
As
people get more and more successful, they start using fewer and fewer hashtags.
That's a good point.
So don't be thrown off. Like, why are they getting thousands of likes with 2 hashtags?
Oh, they have 300,000 followers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So, so much of what we said in our presentation was about having the confidence to run a business, having the confidence to put yourself out there. And it's okay if you're low confidence, but you have to be able and willing to push and to try and to ask and to find new ways and to do research and to see what's working for other people. And if you have an idea, don't just jump into it. Do research to make sure that you're thinking about it in totality, and not just you have this great idea, you do it, and it's all in the color orange, and no one likes orange. Or, you know, I just made that up, of course, because we love orange, as you can see on the screen.
Any other questions? That was a great Q&A session.
Yeah, that was really terrific. Thank you for the great questions. I'm always, not always, I'm available on social media. You can find me everywhere as at EdFredNed. I'm always happy to have conversations. I'm happy to mentor. I'm happy to discuss. I'm happy to talk about ideas. Can I give you an example, Scott? Like yesterday, I was talking with I mentioned this on a LinkedIn post that I did yesterday. I had a conversation with a fellow RISD alum who was talking about his photography and how he's making these really wonderful photography shirts, and that they're not your typical shirt. And using all the words that he was giving me and all the attitude he had towards his work, I was able to just kind of point out to him that that's how he should set up that portion of his business. And honestly, like, he's a smart guy. He would have, I think he would have figured it out, but also sometimes we just need to have a sounding board. And once we hear it said out loud or have it pointed out to us, it just becomes obvious in like what direction you should be taking with a project, with your business, with a new website, with a shirt design that you're working on that isn't quite right or that isn't selling. All that kind of stuff, you got to talk to people.
Very well said. Totally agree. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up for the evening? I mean, I will just say before we formally conclude, this was amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You both, it's always, whenever I see this, it's always an impressive breakdown of so many different facets of freelancing, of which there are many, but you're able to really give each part its due and make it understandable and fun and exciting all at the same time. So we're very, very lucky to have you both